What has your pet accidentally conditioned you to do? My cat Phoenix trained me to sleep with one hand hanging off the bed, and that's how I caught someone breaking into my house at 2:30 a.m. Started when Phoenix was just a kitten. Every night he'd paw at my dangling hand until I pet him. For 2 years I couldn't fall asleep unless my hand was hanging down, waiting for his soft fur. One night instead of Phoenix's fur I felt human hair. My eyes shot open, but I kept my breathing steady, pretending to be asleep. Someone was crouched beside my bed. In the dim light from my window, I could make out a man wearing all black going through my bedside drawer. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he'd hear it. Phoenix wasn't in his usual spot. That should have been my first clue something was wrong. The intruder's head was right under my hanging hand. I had two choices: scream and hope the neighbors heard, or do something really stupid. I chose stupid. I grabbed a fistful of his hair and yanked as hard as I could. He yelped and fell backward. I rolled off the other side of the bed, taking my phone with me. The guy scrambled up, but his hoodie caught on my lamp, pulling it down with a crash. "Get out," I screamed, already dialing 911. "I have a gun." I didn't, but he didn't know that. He bolted for the door. I heard him stumbling down the stairs, knocking things over. That's when I noticed something odd. He wasn't going for the front door, he was heading for my basement. The 911 operator was asking for my address when I heard a familiar voice from downstairs. "Babe, what's all that noise?" My blood ran cold. That was Steven's voice. Steven, my boyfriend of 8 months, who I'd given a key to last week. Steven, who was supposed to be on a business trip to Boston. I crept to the top of the stairs, phone still pressed to my ear. "There's someone in my house," I whispered to the operator. "I think I know who it is." Steven's voice floated up again. "Damn it, Jacob, you were supposed to wait until she took her sleeping pills." My hand shook. Jacob. Steven's work friend who'd been over for dinner twice, who'd used my bathroom both times. Right next to my bedroom where I kept my prescription sleep aids. They'd been casing my house, learning my routine. Steven knew I had a safe in my closet where I kept my grandmother's jewelry, worth nearly $50,000. The operator was saying something about police being 4 minutes away. I heard drawers opening downstairs. They were looking for something. Then I remembered Phoenix. He always slept under my bed. During all this chaos, he hadn't made a sound. I crouched down to check, and there was Phoenix crammed against the wall, fur puffed up. Next to him was Steven's phone, open to a text conversation, found her sleep schedule. Takes pills at 11 p.m., out cold by 11:30 p.m. Safe combination is 173456. Clean job, in and out. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Steven's voice was closer now. "Babe? You okay up there?" I grabbed Phoenix and locked myself in the bathroom. Through the door, I heard Steven's footsteps in my bedroom. "Come on out, sweetheart." "Jacob's gone. It was just a misunderstanding." Police sirens wailed in the distance. Steven started pounding on the bathroom door. "Open up. We can talk about this." Phoenix hissed, something he'd never done before, a warning. I heard a metallic sound. Steven was trying to pick the lock. The sirens got louder. Red and blue lights flashed through my window. Steven's footsteps thundered down the stairs. The front door slammed. When the police arrived, they found my back door kicked in. Steven and Jacob were gone, but Steven's phone was still under my bed. Those texts led to 4 arrests. Turns out they robbed 6 other women the same way. Steven would date them, gain their trust, and learn their routines. I changed my locks, installed cameras, got an actual gun, and learned to use it, but I still sleep with one hand hanging off the bed because every night Phoenix checks on me. I was that patient. The one they now use as a case study in medical schools across the country. It started with something so ordinary, a car accident during my senior year of high school. Nothing catastrophic, just a fender bender at a stoplight. I walked away with only a mild headache and went to school the next day. 2 weeks later, I collapsed during track practice. The athletic trainer thought it was dehydration, but when my speech started slurring, they called an ambulance. In the ER, my CT scan came back normal. They gave me fluids and sent me home with instructions to rest. That night, my mom couldn't wake me for dinner. She called 911, and by the time paramedics arrived, I was having seizures. Back at the hospital, a different ER doctor ordered an MRI. I remember him returning to the room, his face pale, asking my mother, "Has she always had these symptoms?" The MRI revealed what the CT missed. My brain had been slowly bleeding for 2 weeks. The minor accident had torn a blood vessel in my brain. A vessel that, according to the neurosurgeon who examined me next, shouldn't have been there in the first place. "Her cerebral vasculature is unlike anything I've seen before," he told my parents. My brain had developed with an abnormal arrangement of blood vessels. A condition called arteriovenous malformation, or AVM. It's typically caught early in life or becomes fatal before adulthood. Mine had gone undetected for 17 years. The neurosurgeon explained that most people with my condition would have died instantly from the tear. My unusual vessel arrangement had created a sort of natural bypass that slowed the bleeding just enough to keep me alive. They rushed me into emergency surgery. The original 6-hour procedure stretched to 14 as they discovered the full extent of my condition. My brain had essentially grown around these abnormal vessels, adapting to a structure that should have been incompatible with life. I flatlined twice during surgery. The second time, they couldn't restart my heart for nearly 4 minutes. When the surgeon finally emerged to speak with my family, he didn't lead with good news. "I've never seen someone survive with this anatomy," he said. "If she makes it through the night, she'll likely have severe disabilities." I woke up 3 days later. Not only was I conscious, but I could speak, recognize my family, and move all my limbs. The medical team was stunned. The resident assigned to my case kept repeating, "This defies everything in the textbooks." Recovery wasn't easy. I had to relearn certain words, struggled with short-term memory, and need physical therapy to regain full coordination. But 3 months later, I walked at my high school graduation. Something 5 different specialists had said would be impossible. The real surprise came during my 6-month follow-up scan. The neurosurgeon called colleagues to verify what he was seeing. My brain had rewired itself around the surgical changes. Areas that should have been permanently damaged showed activity. Functions typically controlled by damaged sections had migrated to intact regions. Your brain has neuroplasticity levels we typically only see in infants, the neurologist explained. It's as if your brain spent 17 years preparing for this injury. One doctor had hypothesized that my abnormal blood vessels had caused many episodes throughout my development, forcing my brain to constantly adapt and create alternate pathways. The very condition that nearly killed me had also trained my brain to survive the trauma. Today, 5 years later, I'm finishing my neuroscience degree. I volunteer as a subject for brain research studies where researchers still use phrases like unprecedented recovery and anatomical anomaly. My case has helped develop new protocols for traumatic brain injuries. Last month, I returned for my annual checkup with the original neurosurgeon. As he reviewed my latest scans, he shook his head in that now familiar way. You know, he said, in medical school they taught us the brain is mapped out, that certain functions live in specific regions. Your brain proves that's not always true. He pointed to an area on my scan. This section should control your speech, but it's completely inactive, yet you're having this conversation with me. I smiled. Maybe the textbooks need updating, I said. They already have been, he replied. You're in chapter 6. Missing children, what happened? I was 12 when my twin sister vanished from our bedroom in the middle of the night. No forced entry, no signs of a struggle, just an empty bed where Grace should have been. Police came and took statements, set up a command center in our living room, but days turned to weeks. The officers dwindled until only Detective Clyburn remained. My parents transformed overnight. My mom stopped eating, Dad started drinking. They plastered Grace's face on posters across town and appeared on local news begging for information, but nothing came. I was invisible to them now, a painful reminder of what was lost. My identical face a ghost, haunting our home. 3 months after Grace disappeared, I found something strange. While putting away laundry, a small pink notebook hidden inside my father's sock drawer. It wasn't his handwriting inside, but it was Grace's detailed entries about a secret friend she'd made online, someone named Travis who understood her. The last entry, dated the night before she vanished, said simply, "Meeting tonight. Can't wait." My hands shook as I read it. Why would Dad hide this from police? I carefully replaced the notebook and started watching him. He'd begun taking late-night drives, returning with mud on his shoes. Sometimes I caught him staring at me with an expression I couldn't read, not grief, something else. When I asked where he went, he'd say just clearing my head, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. I decided to follow him one night, slipping out after him and hiding in the back of his truck under a tarp. He drove for almost an hour to an abandoned hunting cabin deep in the woods. I watched through the truck window as he entered carrying a backpack. When he didn't come out for 20 minutes, I crept closer, peering through a dirty window. What I saw inside froze my blood. The walls were covered in maps and photos of dozens of girls who looked like Grace and I, same age, same blonde hair, same blue eyes. Some photos were newspaper clippings of missing children, cases dating back years, others looked like surveillance. Dad stood in the center of the room talking to himself. I backed away slowly but stepped on a branch. The snap echoing in the night silence. Cabin door flew open, Dad's flashlight beam cutting through darkness. "Who's there?" he called. I ran blindly through trees, branches whipping my face. I could hear him behind me. "Wait! Stop!" I reached the truck, fumbling with the door handle. When his hand clamped on my shoulder, I screamed, kicking wildly. "Autumn, stop, it's me!" He turned me around, his face pale in the moonlight. "What are you doing here?" "I know about Travis," I gasped. "I found Grace's notebook." "What did you do to her?" Confusion crossed his face, then something like realization. "Get in the truck," he said. "I need to show you something." Every instinct told me to run, but where would I go miles from anywhere with no phone? I got in, keeping the door open, ready to bolt. Dad didn't start the engine, instead he pulled out his own notebook. "I've been tracking him for months," he said. "The man who took Grace." He opened it, revealing a timeline, meticulously documented IP addresses, chat logs, and locations. I found his digital fingerprints on Grace's computer after the police gave up. I've been hunting him ever since. Cabin wasn't a trophy room. It was an investigation center. Dad had been working with other parents of missing girls, creating a map of suspected locations where this predator might be keeping them. "Why didn't you tell the police?" I asked. He said, "Detective Clyburn said it wasn't enough evidence, that I was grasping at straws, so I continued alone." I made him drive us home, promising not to tell Mom if he agreed to share everything with Detective Clyburn one more time. The next day we went together, Dad presenting his evidence more organized. Clyburn listened skeptically until I spoke up. "My sister wrote about meeting someone named Travis. The night she disappeared, Dad found digital evidence. It is this man, you have to look into it." 3 days later, police raided an underground bunker 50 miles from our town. They found 4 girls alive, including Grace. All had been groomed online by the same man who called himself Travis. Grace was the newest. When she saw me at the hospital, she whispered, "I knew you'd find me." Dad never talks about those 3 months he spent hunting a predator while everyone else gave up. Sometimes I catch him looking at the maps, kept as if making sure the nightmare is really over. I learned something during those dark months. Sometimes the people closest to us have depths we never imagined, and the line between obsession and love is thinner than we think. What mundane task did your neighbor do in the middle of the night? It started at 2 a.m. with this weird mechanical humming that cut through the silence like a chainsaw. Hannah shook me awake, her hand gripping my shoulder. "What's that noise?" she whispered, her voice thick with sleep and concern. I listened carefully, definitely a lawnmower on a Tuesday night in November. I stumbled to our bedroom window and peered through the blinds. There was Nick, our usually quiet neighbor, pushing his mower back and forth in the pitch darkness. He had work lights set up everywhere like he was preparing for emergency surgery. The whole scene looked like something out of a horror movie. "Maybe he's just having a midlife crisis," I told Hannah, trying to convince myself as much as her. You know how these suburban dads get, obsessed with their yards. We went back to sleep, but I kept waking up to that constant droning sound. 6 a.m. he was still at it, same methodical pattern, same focused intensity that made my skin crawl. I made coffee and watched him through the kitchen window while Hannah got ready for work. His wife Marissa usually left for her teaching job around 7 a.m. sharp. Today her silver Honda was still sitting in the driveway at 8:30 a.m. "That's really strange," Hannah said, joining me with her coffee mug. She was already dressed in her scrubs for her nursing shift. "Marissa never misses work, she's more punctual than my period, something is definitely wrong here," she said. By 10 a.m. Nick had mowed the same section of grass maybe 20 times. The lawn was basically dirt at this point, torn up and destroyed. He kept going with this robotic determination, methodically obsessive, like he was trying to erase something from existence. I decided to check on him, maybe he was having some kind of mental breakdown. I walked across our adjoining yards and waved my hands in the air. He looked right through me like I was invisible. His eyes were completely bloodshot with dark circles underneath that made him look like a corpse. He reeked of whiskey and desperation. "Nick, you okay, buddy?" I shouted over the engine noise. Nothing, he just kept pushing that mower like a zombie on autopilot. I tried again, louder this time, practically screaming. Finally he stopped the engine and looked at me. His face was completely blank, empty, hollow, like someone had sucked out his soul. "She's gone," he said quietly, his voice barely audible. "Who's gone?" I asked. "Marissa," he replied. "I caught her with my brother last night. In our bed." His voice was monotone and robotic like he was reading from a script. 23 years of marriage down the drain," he said. My stomach dropped like a stone. I'd known Nick and Marissa for 5 years. They seemed happy. They had barbecues. They waved at each other. "Nick, I'm really sorry, man, but maybe you should take a break, get some sleep, talk to someone," I said. "Can't stop," he interrupted, yanking the mower cord. The engine roared back to life. "If I stop, I'll have to think about it." "Can't think about it." "Won't think about it." That's when I noticed the curtains in his house were all drawn shut tight. Every single window was covered. Marissa's car was still there, but I hadn't seen her all day. Not even a shadow moving inside. A chill ran down my spine like ice water. "Nick, where is Marissa now?" I asked. He stopped mowing and stared at me with those hollow dead eyes that had seen too much. "She's sleeping," he said with a twisted smile. "Finally sleeping peacefully, no more running around, no more cheating." The way he said it made my blood freeze in my veins. Something was very, very wrong. I backed away slowly, trying to look calm while my heart pounded in my chest. I called the police from my kitchen, speaking in a hushed tone so Nick couldn't hear. 20 minutes later, 3 squad cars pulled up. They found Marissa's body in their bedroom, still in the same clothes from the night before. Nick had strangled her with the lawnmower cord. "What is your best present revenge story?" "Refuse to give the gift you promised my daughter?" "Fine, I'll take away the gift I got for you. This year I got a new job that finally paid me well after years of struggling, so I went all out for Christmas. I wanted to spoil my family, especially my 9-year-old daughter, who's been incredibly kind, responsible, and helpful. She's done great in school, helps around the house without being asked, and is just the kind of kid you want to reward. I got her 3 big gifts and 3 smaller ones, nothing excessive but enough to make the holiday feel magical for her. My mother-in-law showed up early Christmas Eve and immediately noticed the pile of gifts under the tree. I explained that I'd been fortunate this year and wanted to make it special for everyone, including her, but when she found out how many of the gifts were for my daughter, she got upset. She said a 9-year-old doesn't need that many gifts and announced that she wouldn't be giving my daughter the present she had promised. One my daughter had been looking forward to, it was a doll she'd talked about non-stop. I tried reasoning with her. It's not like I spoil my daughter year-round. Christmas is the one time of year when I can go big, but my mother-in-law insisted it would be a lesson in not always getting what you want. My wife told me to let it go, saying that since it was her mother's gift, she had the right to withhold it. Fine, if that's the logic we're using, then it goes both ways. What my mother-in-law didn't know was that I had spent weeks tracking down a designer handbag she had gushed about. It was a $600 gift, the most expensive one I got for anyone. But after her decision, I quietly removed it from under the tree and replaced it with a $40 bathrobe I had on standby as a backup gift. Christmas morning rolled around and the living room buzzed with excitement. My daughter was thrilled with her gifts, showing gratitude even without the doll she'd hoped for. She didn't pout or complain, she just beamed with joy. That made the whole effort worth it. Then it was my mother-in-law's turn to open her gift from me. She tore into the wrapping expecting something extravagant and pulled out the bathrobe. Her face visibly fell, though she quickly tried to recover with a forced smile. "Oh, thank you," she said. "Is this from you?" she continued. "Yep," I said with a polite nod. "Sorry if it wasn't what you were hoping for, but you know we can't always get what we want." My wife gave me a look later when we were alone. She asked if that was really necessary. I reminded her of what she'd said. Everyone can do what they want with the gifts they give. I just followed their lead. Later that afternoon, my mother-in-law approached me and quietly handed over the doll to my daughter, calling it a late surprise. My daughter was ecstatic. She gave her grandma a big hug, thrilled to receive it with not a hint of resentment. That's just the kind of person she is. Meanwhile, I didn't have to say a word. The message was clear and justice was done in the most festive way possible.